Tracking your results. All right, this is a big one. This is where the rubber hits the road. I mean, this is so important. If you don't track your results, you'll never know what's working well for you. Now, I like to track my results to a very, very detailed way because literally just in the last 6 months, I took it to a different level of tracking. We used to just track like anything that was probate, we'd put a number, and if it was, say, an absentee owner, we would track it. If it was a yellow letter versus a postcard, what we're doing now is we're actually tracking not just like all probates and calling it one campaign. We're actually tracking every different piece of mail that goes there and every touch of that mail. And that might seem obsessive and like that's just like way over the top, but I can tell you that this last 9 months I tracked that way and I found out about 30% of what I was doing wasn't working very well at all. So now in the next 6 months we were going to be able to get a much better result because we got rid of some like 30% of our stuff that just wasn't working. And because I wasn't tracking in high enough detail, I could not ever gotten that information, which I would probably estimate costed me hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, just because I didn't want to get, I was worried about being too picky, too detailed. I don't know that you can be too picky or too detailed, obviously. So when you're sending mailers and you're spending this kind of money, it makes sense. It's pretty easy to track them, and it's very easy to get free, cheap numbers. I pay from CallRail like $20 a month to get 20 numbers. It's pretty cheap. So we want to do that. Now, the key to what we track weekly is we want to look at every, create a marketing report, and then you'll get that free with this training. There is a marketing report you'll get, and we'll have that in the resources. And you put in, okay, this is my probate list, and you start when the probate list, went out and what list it is for, like, let's just say it's for the month of June in 2018. Then you put that, it's probate list, and then you'll put out that you sent 300 mailers out. Then you might put, okay, the month 2 I sent 300 postcards, and in month 3 I sent out 300 different types, maybe pink mailers or something different, or maybe in month 4 I sent out yellow letters, and we'd want to track all those with different numbers if they're different. Now, we don't want to change the number if it's another yellow letter in month 4. We would actually keep the same yellow letter. The key is we want to have a number so we can track like how many deals and how many phone calls did we get from the yellow letters. So it says here we want to track our KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. The key performance indicators when it comes to mailers are, we want to know how many phone calls we're getting. We want to know how many mailers we sent out and how many phone calls were generated by those mailers, and then how many appointments were generated by those phone calls and how many deals were generated. And then the last most important KPI is how much money did we make. And that does take a little time to track. You can't get that KPI until you've done a deal and you gotten it to settlement. So what our hope is that when we get all those KPIs and all that information, and let's say it takes 3 to 6 months to get that we can say, okay, I spent $3,000, 500 letters a month, and in that $3,000, I was able to make $14,000. So, and from that, I spent, the $3,000 we talked about, I made 14, and you could say, okay, that's a pretty good return on my investment. I invested 3 and I made 14. That's not the greatest return, but it's a pretty good return. If now you did 2 deals there for $7K each as wholesale deals, you could have very easily renovated those for $30K each and made $60,000. But maybe you're new and you're not ready for that, and that's totally okay. When you wholesale, you will see a much lower return, but imagine if you spent $3,000 and you made 60, that's like a 20 times return. So that's a really great return. That's why I love renovating, because you get a better return and it's actually easier to be more competitive with your marketing. So at the end of the day, when we get really happy about it is when we know we spent $3,000 and we made 14. That's going to be the key right there. Everything else in between just tells a story, but it's very important we have it. And we want to know like what mailer versus what list generated this income. Because yes, I can give you what works for me, but I will tell you that I'm in multiple masterminds across the country, and it is very different in every state and every city. And even sometimes in the same state, like maybe I send a different type of letter. I'm a different type. Maybe I'm a different demographic, a person. So I maybe sending letters out to an African American community, if I was African American, would get me a better result than if I send to old white people and I'm white. Maybe I get some white privilege. Who knows? This is the thing. We don't really care what, the reality of that is. We only care that we track it very objectively. So we know that, okay, this works for me, and maybe that's what works for Mike. But for me personally, when I send a postcard out, I get a better result. Like, we want to know that. Now start with what I'm showing you works for me. And if it's not working for you, then you adjust until you get it to work. And when you can get this mixture together and you can make everything work, so when you start to make a lot of money, because then you can take and multiply it and do more and more of it. So the next part of it is to analyze the KPIs monthly and see how your processes are performing. So when we talk about analyzing KPIs monthly to see how your processes are working, this isn't just about the marketing. A big part of whether your marketing works or your marketing does not work is how do you run the lead. So, obviously, if your marketing is working really well, we can tell that by, having the KPIs of if you send out, say, 100 letters and you get 4 or 5 phone calls, that's actually really good. We usually are looking for about 0.5% to 1% return rate. So meaning that the conversion would be we get a phone call. So if you send 100 letters out and you get 1 phone call, that's a 1% conversion rate or return rate. And that's 1% is really good these days. So if you send out 500 letters, you get 5 phone calls. So 500 letters a month is about 1.25 phone calls a week. Now, of those calls, we start to know that every 20 phone calls we get, we have a good chance of getting a deal. So at the ratio of sending 500 letters a month, you could expect to get a deal in 4 months for about $2,000. That's pretty good, actually. Now, I've seen it cost more and I've seen it cost less. It really depends on how good you are at running the leads. So what I mean by good, are you calling all the people back, or are you following up with them on a regular basis? Are you building rapport? Are you really going out and digging into the deal and trying to make it happen? Or are you being lazy about it? If you're being lazy, you could actually affect your results. So we want to make sure your processes are working and that they're performing correctly. So it's not just that, so the first step we measure, and this is going to be the marketing piece of it. This is how we analyze whether it's marketing or whether it's your process. So marketing is if you're getting 0.5% to 1% return back on your phone calls, then your marketing is working. But let's imagine you get like 30 phone calls, but none of them turn into deals, then your marketing's not working. So let's go to the next one. KPIs can be used to forecast where the future deals will come from. So what we do is if we run this for 6 months and we get multiple deals from our campaign, then we'd want to go back and see where in the campaign generated all the profits, where in the campaign worked, so we could do more of that. And if we see that, okay, there's a bunch of areas we mailed to and they didn't do anything for us, and we have given it the proper amount of time, then we would not stop doing that. And then we try to really focus in on what's working so we can do more of what's working, so we cut our costs down and we get more hyper focused on the stuff that's working well for us.